With an AEW star hinting at retirement and more, this is Wrestling Hub. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we get into the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Hub and turn on all notifications to stay up to date with everything in the world of pro wrestling. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Wrestling Hub Official and follow us on Twitter at Wrestling_Hub. At the All Out post-show press conference, AEW President Tony Khan said this about the status of former TBS champion Jade Cargill, who's been out of action since losing her title. I talked to Jade recently. Hopefully we'll get Jade back soon. We'll have to stay tuned to when and where Jade might pop up again in the world. Definitely a big fan of Jade. She put together one of the most dominant runs ever and was stopped by Chris Statlander. Chris Statlander added, as I've said before, I'm willing to prove that my win over her was not a fluke. I know there was the controversy of the second match. Did she really put out the challenge? Whenever she is ready, I'm accepting any challenge from anyone, especially her, and I will prove that my win is my win, and I truly am the TBS champion. Asked about Edge possibly joining AEW after seemingly having his final match for WWE, Christian Cage said at the All Out post-show press conference, I only talk about myself and Luchasaurus, and I have no friends other than Luchasaurus, and I'll leave it at that. During that same press conference, Christian Cage revealed that he signed a new AEW deal, as Ringside News wrote. During the press conference after AEW All Out, Christian Cage had a chance to speak to the media. During that time, he was very proud about what he and Luchasaurus have accomplished as TNT champion. Christian Cage went on to reveal that he just inked a new deal with AEW. He said that Tony Khan inked him to a fat contract, and he's worth every penny as well. Addressing the departure of Sonny Kiss from AEW, Tony Khan noted during the All Out post-show press conference, I've really liked Sonny Kiss. We have a roster of over 100 wrestlers now across AEW, and Sonny's a great wrestler. I think I've done a lot to really keep the locker room stable, and I have a lot of people that I normally keep under contract, but also I've done well, I think, to not do major mass layoffs and let 20, 30 people go at a time. But I can't renew every single contract in AEW. It would be impossible, and with such a big roster and limited amount of TV spot, I think Sonny Kiss is a great wrestler and had a lot of potential from the beginning of AEW and still has a lot of potential as a wrestler. I think he could certainly be back eventually, as we've seen some wrestlers go on and do exciting things and come back, like Stu Grayson, for example. So you never know what the future holds for Sonny Kiss or AEW. Following his strap match at All Out, Bryan Danielson was asked about taking Tony Khan's place in creative, as he replied, I love that aspect of it so much, but I also love being with my family, and going to shows takes you away from your family. My poor wife, I told her, like, hey, you know, things might happen tonight, and she watched the show tonight with our kids. Our son, who is 3 years old, is a maniac. Our daughter, who's 6, she was terrified. Our son, Buddy, loved it. Like, oh yeah, hit daddy more. But our daughter, she says to me, Daddy, you're going to be done wrestling when I turn 7, right? Like, you're going to be home every day when I turn 7. That's really hard to turn down, right? You know, I've been very fortunate to have this thing that I love, that I do, a huge part of my life for 23 plus years. But then at one point it felt like, if not the most important thing, one of the most important things. But then new things become important things, and seeing my kids do the things they love to do and being there for them, and also being there for my wife, because if any of you are parents, single parenting is hard, regardless of what you do. So all of that to say, I've got a lot of thinking to do. It's not like all that's to say that's not a no. It's a how do I make this work while still keeping the meaningful things in my life, the things I find to be important, putting them in top priority. There are puzzles to figure out, and sometimes the pieces don't fit, and I had a good run, and it might be time to move on. Speaking about the current state of the AEW locker room after the firing of CM Punk, Adam Cole said at the All Out post-show press conference, as far as the vibe, the excitement that we've had over the past few weeks for these events have not gone unnoticed by anyone. Again, all in happening Wembley Stadium, breaking pro wrestling attendance numbers this weekend with All Out, knowing we had to follow it up with a huge event. The locker room was stoked. The locker room was ready to go. They were ready to put on the best show we possibly could. We were also thinking about the future. We've made big strides, and this company hasn't been around for very long, so we're thinking about the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, as everyone's so pumped and ready to go. So, the locker room is feeling good, man. It appears that prior to William Regal leaving AEW that he too had an altercation with CM Punk, as Bodyslam.net reports. Multiple sources have confirmed to me details about an incident that took place between CM Punk and William Regal, which took place when Regal made his AEW debut. In the altercation between the two men, Punk refused to shake Regal's hand, and would then get in the legend's face, telling him that he did not like him, he did not trust him, and that Regal was a stooge for Triple H. Brian Alvarez added on Wrestling Observer Radio, anyway, whatever it was at the time, Regal didn't even tell anybody. He told friends of his months later, and when he told them, he made it seem like it wasn't a big deal. That doesn't mean it wasn't a big deal, but that's what he was saying, that it wasn't a big deal. With Jack Perry having reportedly been suspended from AEW after his backstage altercation with CM Punk at All in London, Tony Khan confirmed this at the All Out post-show press conference, saying, "He's been suspended indefinitely. We've suspended everybody in that investigation and took further action after that based on what happened and came out of the investigation. We suspended Jack as a participant in an incident backstage, and Jack hasn't been around. That's all I can say about it. At the time, we did suspend him, and he hasn't been at AEW since AEW All In." As AEW President Tony Khan was asked about CM Punk having a non-compete clause following his release from the promotion, Khan said at the post-show press conference, "I don't want to discuss the terms of the separation in that sense. I very much want to thank CM Punk, Phil, for everything he did in AEW as a wrestler. I don't think it was an easy decision for anybody on the discipline committee or the outside counsel or for me to do something like that. I do think it was the right move. As far as what's going to happen in the future, I can't speak to that. I'm not the attorney who interpret all that language." Giving more information on a possible non-compete clause for CM Punk, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful reported that while it was noted the termination was with cause, thus far we do not know if there is a non-compete attached or a severance period. As a result, we don't know when Punk would be eligible for a move to another wrestling company. He still has major heat with numerous top names in WWE and was asked to leave earlier this year when he showed up. There had been no real expectations or plans of Punk heading to WWE, and most people we spoke to there didn't think he was going to be fired. Despite CM Punk's deal recently being terminated by AEW, this was said about the status of producer for the company and friend of Punk, Ace Steel, as Dave Meltzer revealed on Wrestling Observer Radio. Ace Steel, which AEW President Tony Khan at the AEW All Out Media Scrum didn't address. I mean, he still is in the same position that he was in 3 days ago. There's nothing for sure. For sure, obviously, he could be let go, but he hasn't done anything wrong, number one, and there's no movement like there's a lot of people who wanted Punk gone. A lot. I mean, not everyone, but a lot, as best I can tell at this point. And this is the whole key to the whole freaking thing. And the sad part of the whole thing is that, as best I can tell, nobody's adamant that Ace is gone. They weren't happy when he was hired, but now it's kind of like he's there. He's working remote. He didn't do anything wrong. I have heard no movement of anyone like, okay, now that Punk's gone, let's get rid of Ace at all from anybody. My gut is that he'll be there and he'll be working the same job that he's working, and there's no reason for him not to. Touching on the supposed meeting that was set to take place between the Elite and CM Punk and AEW, Brian Alvarez noted on Wrestling Observer Radio, there are more questions about the Elite and CM Punk meeting. So here's more on this because I heard a lot more about this today. So the meeting being canceled is essentially a semantic issue, depending on which side you're talking to. So what happened was they had a Collision Dynamite taping in Atlanta. They were going to tape both shows, okay, right? So I think it was Tony Khan who asked the Elite, it's like, we're all going to be in the same place at the same time. Would you like to do this meeting or whatever? And they said no. So from their perspective, there was never a meeting plan that got canceled. They were asked, would you like to do this meeting since we're all going to be in the same place? And they said no. From Punk's perspective, he believed he was on his way to a meeting, which then got canceled. And so I guess the analogy would be if your dentist scheduled you for a cleaning and then called you and you were like, I can't do the cleaning that day. From their perspective, the appointment got canceled. From your perspective, there was no appointment. So that's essentially the story there. There was nothing that the Elite agreed to and then said, no, actually, we're not going to do this. Most of these stories about Punk wanting to meet with the Elite never even knew that this was never even broached with them in the past. This time, it was broached with them and they said, no, we're not going to do it. So that's the story on the meeting that was canceled. And this was your pro wrestling news update. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all later.